Do you ever wonder why you feel a quiet ache, a guilt you can't explain, for not being loved by someone who should have loved you most? It's a question that stings, but maybe it stings because you've already whispered it to yourself in the dark. Society tells us mothers are sacred, unconditional, instinctive, flawless in their love. But what if that's a myth? What if your mother's love left you with absence, rejection, or a weight you've carried silently for years? You're not alone. And this video will show you why that pain matters and how to heal it. Stick with me, because I'm diving deep into the maternal wound, the invisible scar that shapes how you trust, love, and see yourself. You'll discover the two types of wounds, active and subtle, and how they echo into adulthood, from shaky relationships to self-doubt. I'll reveal practical steps to break free, backed by psychology and real experience, plus a challenge that transformed my story and could transform yours. Watch to the end for tools to rewrite your emotional patterns, reclaim your voice, and stop the cycle for yourself or your kids. This isn't just a video, it's your first step to freedom. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Psychologists often divide the maternal wound into two main categories, the active wound and the subtle wound. The active wound is, in many ways, easier to spot. It comes from clear, painful events, emotional, physical, or verbal abuse, abandonment, neglect, and violence. These are the traumas that leave marks, not just on the body, but on the spirit. They are loud, recognizable, and often acknowledged by others. But the subtle wound, oh, that one is trickier. And, in my experience, it can be even more insidious. It hides behind behaviors that look like love, but feel like manipulation. It shows up when mothers are overly controlling, critical, and overprotective, or when they blur boundaries by turning their daughters into emotional confidants or best friends. On the surface, it might seem like closeness, but underneath, it teaches a devastating lesson that love must be earned by shrinking, pleasing, or performing. And the worst part, as a child, you don't know the difference. You internalize the idea that love is conditional, that you must be the problem. So you try harder, you stay small, you adapt, you become hyper-aware of other people's moods, always scanning for signs of danger or withdrawal. And little by little, you lose the sense that you are allowed to simply be messy, imperfect, human, and still be loved. Authors like Peg Streep in Unloved Daughters and Alice Miller in The Drama of the Gifted Child have done powerful work exposing how these maternal wounds don't disappear with time, they evolve. They morph into patterns that dominate our adult lives, often without our awareness. We find ourselves repeating the same cycles in relationships, choosing partners who mirror our mother's emotional unavailability or criticism, sabotaging love before it can grow too close, too intimate, and too real. I find Carl Jung's perspective especially haunting and beautiful. He saw the mother as the first image of the world, a primal archetype. And when that image is broken, it's not just pain we feel, it's disorientation. It's as if your internal compass is off, your emotional foundation cracked. You go through life walking on emotional eggshells, loving with caution, trusting with fear. You might build a life, a career, even a family, but deep down, you still carry that child who never felt safe, never felt seen, and no success can fully silence that ache. That's why naming this wound is so important. Not to place blame or stir resentment, but to finally make sense of the chaos inside. Because until you name it, it stays shapeless. It runs your life from the shadows. But the moment you say, "This is what hurt me," something miraculous begins to happen. The shame starts to loosen its grip. You start seeing the patterns, not as flaws in your character, but as brilliant, painful strategies for survival. So many of us go through life haunted by the feeling that we are somehow broken, that no matter what we do, we're not enough. We chase love, perfection, chase validation, not knowing that we're running from the ghost of unmet childhood needs. And when that maternal wound goes unspoken, it seeps into our sense of identity. We confuse our trauma responses with our personality traits. We think we're naturally anxious, naturally self-doubting, and naturally afraid of connection. But that's not who we are. That's who we became to survive. Maybe you've struggled to trust others, not because someone hurt you in adulthood, but because as a child, you learned that love could disappear without warning. Maybe you find yourself endlessly over-explaining, apologizing, or sacrificing your needs because you were taught that saying no meant you didn't deserve love. Maybe your inner critic is so loud, so cruel, because your mother's voice lives inside your head, replaying every moment you weren't perfect. And yet, I truly believe this. You were never the problem. You were just a child doing your best to earn love from someone who couldn't give it freely. That is not your failure. That is your resilience. Mothers, even with the best intentions, can unconsciously pass down emotional wounds they never healed. They teach with silence, with sighs, with glances that say, "You're too much," or "You're not enough." They shape our relationship with our bodies, our emotions, and our very right to exist as we are. And the impact is profound. Shame becomes second nature. Vulnerability feels dangerous. And deep inside, we carry a fear that being loved will somehow cost us too much. And let's talk about hypersensitivity, that aching feeling that everything hurts more than it should. That's not a weakness. That's adaptation. That's your nervous system doing everything it can to protect you from being wounded again. It's your body remembering what your mind has tried to forget. It's intelligence born out of pain. Even the patterns we hate the most, choosing emotionally unavailable partners, fearing intimacy, pushing people away, aren't just mistakes. They are echoes. They are echoes of the original wound repeating itself again and again, hoping someone will finally love us enough to heal it. And the cruel irony is, what we needed was so simple, just a steady gaze, a soft voice, a mother who could say, "You're safe. You're loved. You don't have to earn it." That look, that touch, that consistent presence, it was never just a moment. It was the blueprint for how we would see the world, see ourselves, and see love. This is the heart of attachment theory, which shows that our early emotional bonds become the template for all future relationships. And in most cases, the central figure in that template is our mother. If that bond is insecure, unpredictable, or painful, then our adult relationships will reflect that confusion until we stop, turn inward, and choose to heal. Healing this wound is not about blaming our mothers. It's about reclaiming ourselves. It's about taking the pain that once defined us and transforming it into power, clarity, and compassion. It's a long road, but it begins with a single, courageous step, telling the truth about what we needed, what we didn't get, and how that still shapes us today. And I want you to hear this from someone who's been there. You are not alone. So many of us walk with invisible wounds, but we are not broken. We are becoming whole, one truth at a time. When a mother offers consistent affection, emotional presence, and a sense of predictability, something beautiful takes root in the child. It's like a sacred anchor is dropped into the soul. The child begins to believe on a deep, unshakable level that love is safe, that others can be trusted, and that their own emotions are valid and worthy of expression. That's what we call secure attachment, a kind of inner compass that allows a person to navigate relationships with openness, self-respect, and emotional resilience. But when that love is unstable, cold, suffocating, or tragically absent, the compass breaks. The child is left to drift into a sea of emotional confusion. That's where insecure attachment begins to form quietly, relentlessly, shaping how we relate, how we give love, and how we receive it. This kind of wound doesn't always scream, it often seeps. It seeps into how we text someone back, how we hesitate before asking for what we need, and how we brace ourselves for disappointment even before it arrives. One of the most heartbreaking patterns is anxious attachment. This develops when a child grows up constantly, unsure if the love will come or be withdrawn. One day, mom is warm and affectionate. The next, she's cold, distracted, or worse, critical and emotionally withdrawn. That unpredictability creates a toxic loop of fear and longing. As adults, these children become lovers, friends, and spouses who cling, who overgive, who overthink every word and gesture. They live in a constant state of emotional hunger, terrified of being abandoned, yet often sacrificing their voice just to avoid rocking the boat. I've seen this, and I've felt it. It's like walking on eggshells in your own heart. Then there's avoidant attachment, a pattern that grows when a child learns that showing emotions leads to rejection or punishment. These children often have mothers who are emotionally distant, disapproving, or unresponsive to their emotional needs. So the child adapts by shutting down, by turning away from their feelings. They learn that it's safer not to need anyone. As adults, they become fiercely independent on the outside. But inside, there's often a deep, aching loneliness they don't even know how to name. They keep people at arm's length, not because they don't want love, but because love feels dangerous. Love means losing control. Love means risking pain. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. And perhaps the most complex and painful of all is disorganized attachment. This emerges when the mother is both the source of love and the source of fear. Imagine the deep emotional confusion of being drawn to the person who hurts you, who frightens you, who betrays your trust. These are often the children of abuse, emotional manipulation, or trauma. As adults, they live in a constant push-pull dynamic, desperate for connection, yet terrified of being consumed by it. They may sabotage healthy relationships, lash out in fear, or run when someone gets too close. And beneath it all, there's often a deep-rooted belief that they are somehow too much or not enough, that love is something they have to chase, but never fully hold. What all of these patterns have in common, every single one of them, is that they begin with the earliest bond we ever formed, the bond with our mother, not because she meant to harm us, but because of what she couldn't give. The wound isn't always about what happened, but often what didn't. The hug that never came, the words we needed but never heard, the silence stretched too long, the gaze that didn't soften. The absence, either emotional or physical, left us feeling invisible. And here's what I've come to believe with my whole heart: these patterns are not a life sentence. They're not character flaws. They're not signs that we're broken. They are maps. Emotional maps point to where the pain began, and more importantly, where healing must begin. When we begin to identify our attachment style, we start unraveling the mystery of why some relationships feel like war zones, why love scares us, or why we stay in situations that break us over and over again. Because deep inside, every one of us carries an image of our mother, not just her physical appearance or her voice, but something deeper. There's a version of her that lives in our psyche. She whispers to us, often in moments of weakness. Sometimes that whisper sounds like judgment, "You're not good enough." Sometimes it's fear, "Don't trust them, they'll leave you." Sometimes it's guilt, shame, or confusion. And here's the truth that changed my life. That voice inside is often far more cruel than the real woman ever was. Carl Jung called this the psychic mother, an internal archetype that's not just unique to your personal experience, but shared across the collective unconscious. He referred to her as the Great Mother, an archetype that embodies both creation and destruction, comfort and chaos, light and shadow. The archetypal mother has two faces. One is luminous, nurturing, sheltering, embracing. The other is dark, manipulative, controlling, punishing, smothering. And when the real mother fails to meet your emotional needs, especially over time, the inner image of her becomes dominated by the shadow. Even long after we've grown up, even if we've moved miles away, even if our real mother has passed, we can remain imprisoned by the internal mother. We carry her inside. Her voice becomes our inner critic. Her gaze becomes the way we judge ourselves. Her coldness becomes the fear we project onto every new connection. And that's the tragic beauty of it. The wound no longer needs her physical presence to keep hurting. It's a tape that plays quietly in the background of our lives, repeating the same message: you are not enough. But here's where hope begins. Healing the maternal wound does not depend on your real mother changing. And for so many, that's a profound and freeing truth, because she may never change. She may never apologize. She may never see what she did, but you can still heal. Because what needs to change is not her. It's the internal mother image you've carried all your life. That voice, that story, that emotional blueprint, you have the power to rewrite it. Depth psychology teaches us something revolutionary. You don't need permission from your mother to reclaim your peace. You don't need her approval to validate your worth. You don't need her love to start loving yourself. The healing begins when you stop waiting for the real mother to give you what she couldn't and begin offering it to yourself. The moment you realize it's the internal mother, the image, the echo, the story that's been holding you back, is the moment you step into emotional freedom. You can choose to become your own safe space. You can learn to parent the child within you in the way she always deserved. You can rebuild your inner world so that love feels safe again, and so that your relationships stop echoing pain from the past. This isn't easy. It's some of the hardest work a human heart can do, but it is also the most sacred. Because on the other side of that work is a life where you are no longer ruled by fear, shame, or longing. A life where you belong fully to yourself. And that, my friend, is the kind of healing that changes everything. True transformation doesn't come from wishing our mothers had been different. It doesn't come from rewriting her story or begging the past to be softer. No. Real healing begins when we start to shift our relationship with the internal mother, the psychic presence we still carry, often without realizing it. It's not about changing who she was, it's about rebuilding the emotional home she helped construct within us. Imagine that inner world as a house you've been living in since childhood. Maybe it's filled with cramped, suffocating rooms. The air is heavy with judgment. The windows are shut tight, keeping out the light. But now, you have the power to start remodeling. You can knock down the walls that make you feel small. You can open the windows and let your truth breathe. You can replace fear with inner strength, swap demands for compassion, and turn cold silence into a space where your emotions are finally allowed to speak. Let me be honest here. This kind of emotional distance from your authentic self didn't happen overnight. You didn't suddenly decide to lose yourself. You didn't wake up one day and say, "Today, I'll forget who I am." No. It was slow. It was subtle. And it was survival. Little by little, you learned to hide the parts of yourself that weren't welcomed, weren't understood, or were simply too much for others to handle. So, you put on masks. You silenced your voice. You tucked your feelings into the corners of your heart. And you built a version of yourself, a persona that could be accepted. That persona smiled when it wanted to cry. It agreed to things it didn't want. It said, "I'm fine," when inside it was unraveling. It became everything that was expected at the cost of everything real. Carl Jung called this the persona, a necessary mask we wear to move through the world. And in many ways, it protects us. But here's the hard truth I had to face myself. When you identify too deeply with the mask, you begin to believe it is who you are. And behind that mask, the real you starts to fade. The wild, raw, emotional, intuitive, powerful you begin to disappear. Often, that persona is shaped by our early relationship with our mother. We become the son who strives to please, the daughter who never causes trouble, the adult who anxiously seeks validation, not even realizing they're still trying to earn love the same way they did at age 5. And what about everything you pushed away? Your anger, your grief, your desires, your shame? All of it didn't vanish. It was exiled. It was cast into the shadow, what Jung described as the basement of the unconscious. It's the emotional attic where you stuffed every piece of yourself that wasn't acceptable. But here's the thing, what we repress doesn't stay buried. It doesn't politely fade into the background. No, it comes roaring back through anxiety, depression, self-sabotage, or repeated emotional cycles that leave us wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Those unresolved parts show up in your relationships, in your emotional triggers, in the way you either shut down or explode. They creep in during quiet moments and flood your system in conflict. And at the heart of it all is something deep, tender, and often terrifying, the maternal complex. This complex is not just a collection of memories, it's a living, unconscious force. It holds the emotional weight of your earliest experiences with your mother, and when it's triggered, you don't respond from your adult self. You respond from the child. You were the one who longed to be seen, to be held, to be heard. You could be 30, 40, 50, or 70 years old, but in that instant, you're 5 again. And the pain is just as raw. You're trying to please. You're hoping not to be abandoned. You're fighting against an emptiness that was never filled. This is why, no matter how much we achieve or how far we run, we still feel like something's missing. Because these defense mechanisms, this constant need to prove ourselves, to be chosen, to be perfect, keep pulling us away from who we are. We start living reactively, shaping our decisions not from freedom, but from fear, from a desperate hope that if we just do everything right, maybe this time the love will stay. But that love we crave on the outside, it can only be born when we return to what we left behind. When we reconnect with the exiled parts, when we take off the mask and whisper, I see you, you're allowed to be here. Recognizing your persona is the first step to finding your real face again, the one you had before the world told you to be someone else. Facing your shadow is where your strength starts to return, because those rejected parts are where your power lives. Understanding your maternal complex is how you begin to tell the difference between your past reacting and your present speaking. And this isn't just about how we relate to others. It's about how we relate to love itself. The way you love right now, how you give, how you receive, how you retreat, or overextend may not be your true choice. It may be a pattern, an echo of what you learned in the early years when your heart first opened and got hurt. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Here's the kicker. We think we're choosing who we love, but more often than not, it's the image of our mother that's doing the choosing. The unconscious imprint she left, the emotional signature of what love felt like with her, still lives inside us. And it quietly directs who we're drawn to, who we push away, and who we try to fix. Jung spoke about this in the language of archetypes. He said that inside every man is a feminine image, the anima, and inside every woman, a masculine image, the animus. These are inner representations of the opposite sex, formed in early life. For boys, the mother shapes the anima. For girls, the father shapes the animus. But when it comes to the maternal wound, that influence can become overwhelming. It doesn't just affect your relationships, it dominates them. It can make intimacy feel suffocating. It can make rejection feel like death. It can make you confuse control with love or absence with worthlessness. I believe this with everything in me. Healing is possible. And it begins with seeing what's inside you, not to judge it, not to shame it, but to finally hold it with compassion. You are not your persona. You are not your shadow. You are not the wound. You are the one who can witness it all and choose something new. You may not have had the love you deserved, but you can become the one who gives it now. And that kind of love, the kind that sees all of you and says, "You're still enough," is the love that saves. Men who carry the wound of an emotionally distant, unpredictable, or manipulative mother often grow up with what Jungian psychology calls a wounded anima. But this isn't just an abstract concept. It's a living imprint, a subconscious lens that colors how a man connects with women throughout his life. This inner feminine image, the anima, is supposed to represent emotional depth, intuition, sensitivity, and relational balance. But when that image is damaged by a lack of nurturing love in childhood, it becomes distorted. It becomes needy, chaotic, fanned, fragmented. And here's what often happens, and I've seen this pattern play out in the lives of many men I've known and counseled. They find themselves repeatedly drawn to women who are emotionally unavailable, overly critical, or impossible to satisfy. Not because they want pain, but because they're unconsciously trying to resolve the original heartbreak, the ache left by a mother who couldn't love them in a steady, safe, unconditional way. They seek, in romantic partners, the validation they never received. They hope, often without realizing it, that if this woman can finally love them, they'll prove to themselves that they were always worthy of love. But instead of healing, they often end up re-traumatized. Women, on the other hand, often internalize a different psychic distortion, the negative animus, an inner masculine figure that doesn't offer support or strength, but criticism and control. This animus becomes a harsh inner voice, one that constantly says, "You're not doing enough, you're weak, and you can't rely on anyone." It's like living with an invisible drill sergeant in your head, barking orders, demanding perfection, and punishing any sign of vulnerability. What's striking is that, for many women, this negative animus doesn't only come from their father. It often originates from their mother, from the woman who first taught them what it meant to be female, to be strong, to survive. Perhaps the mother was hardened by her pain, passing down messages like "don't cry, don't depend on anyone, and you have to be the best." And without meaning to, she planted seeds of fear and rigidity. The result? Women who demand the impossible from themselves, who silence their needs, who falls for dominant or emotionally cold men, replaying the same script of being unseen, unchosen and devalued. These patterns, whether it's the wounded anima in men or the wounded animus in women, aren't just psychological theories. They're living forces within us. Archetypes, symbols, deep emotional energies influence how we love, how we give ourselves, and more heartbreakingly, how we let ourselves be loved. And as long as these inner images remain wounded and unhealed, love will come with pain. It will come with confusion, with longing, with cycles that repeat until the message is heard. But here's the turning point, the sacred moment of transformation. When you realize that you've been loving from a wound, when you stop trying to fix the past through your partner, when you start loving not for healing, but from healing, that's when everything begins to shift. Love stops being a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary. You stop seeking completion and start sharing your wholeness. You stop recreating the past and begin rewriting your story. But not all wounds are loud. Some of the deepest ones come wrapped in beautiful packages. They come wearing pearls and smiles. They say things like, "I gave up everything for you," but underneath is a river of poison. One of the most insidious and hard to recognize wounds comes from the narcissistic mother. And let me say, this kind of pain can be soul-crushing because it's so hard to name. There are no bruises, no scenes of obvious cruelty. Often, the world sees a charming, generous, even saintly woman. But inside the home, there's a storm. The narcissistic mother doesn't always scream or dominate publicly. Sometimes, her control is elegant, a silent suffocation that leaves no trace. Her love is not love, it's possession. You're not seen as a separate person with your own needs, desires, or destiny. You are merely an extension of her, a trophy, a tool, a mirror. You exist to fulfill her emotional voids, to prop up her ego, to make her feel important. And that kind of love is conditional. You're praised when you conform. You're punished often with guilt, silence, or passive aggression when you shine too brightly, speak too boldly, or challenge her authority. With daughters, this often shows up as competition. The mother criticizes her daughter's looks, her choices, and her success. It's as if her daughter's blossoming threatens her sense of self. With sons, the dynamic can become emotionally incestuous. He becomes her confidant, her emotional partner, her little man, and in the process, his own identity is erased. This dynamic creates children who grow up exhausted, who feel like no matter what they do, it's never enough, who internalize the belief that they are only lovable when they are useful, obedient, and perfect. They become adults who fear rejection so deeply that they'll abandon themselves just to keep the peace. Emotional blackmail becomes the language of this relationship. After everything I've done for you, you're being so selfish, you don't care about anyone but yourself. The praise, when it comes, is fleeting, offered like a treat to a dog, and always followed by another demand. It creates children who don't know how to rest, who don't know how to be. They grow up believing they must earn their place in every relationship, constantly apologizing for existing. Jung once said that when a mother possesses the child's ego, the child never truly becomes an individual. And I believe that to the depths of my soul. When your entire sense of self is built on someone else's needs, there is no space for you. You don't know what you want. You don't know how you feel. You don't know who you are when you're not trying to be what someone else needs. This is the silent legacy of the narcissistic mother. Adults with low self-worth, constantly second-guessing themselves, terrified of conflict, unable to say no without drowning in guilt. Adults who still carry a voice inside hers that whispers, "You're not enough." And until that voice is confronted, until the inner child is rescued from that dynamic, the cycle continues. But here's what I want you to hear, especially if this is your story. You are not the problem. You were a child trying to survive in a system where love came with a price. And now, as an adult, you have the right to rewrite the script. You can rebuild your anima or animus. You can question the voice in your head. You can reclaim your self-worth. You can create relationships that don't mimic the pain of the past, but reflect the healing of the present. It begins by recognizing what happened, permitting yourself to grieve what never was, and choosing again and again to come home to yourself. A child who grows up adapting too much to their mother learns a dangerous lesson early in life, that love must be earned by disappearing, by being good, by being quiet, by not asking for too much. In trying to be who their mother needed them to be, soothing her emotions, meeting her expectations, filling her emptiness, they slowly lost touch with who they were meant to be. And that loss doesn't stay locked in childhood. It echoes. As adults, these children continue to mold themselves to fit into the lives of others at work, in friendships and romantic relationships. They become chameleons, shifting colors to survive. They hesitate to speak up, to take up space, to say, "This is who I am," without apology, because somewhere deep down, they still fear that being fully themselves will lead to rejection, abandonment, or punishment. It's a kind of psychic prison, and it's built not with chains, but with expectations, guilt, and silence. But that prison, it can be broken, and the key isn't changing the mother. It's releasing the illusion that she will one day become what she never was. That somehow, if you just heal enough, achieve enough, give enough, she'll finally love you in the way you need. The healing starts When you stop waiting for the love that's not coming the way you hoped. When you turn inward and begin to rebuild a self from the inside out, a self that wasn't born to serve, to adapt, to disappear, but to exist boldly and freely. And this work becomes even more urgent when you realize a painful truth. If you don't heal what hurt you, you might, without meaning, to pass it on to your children. That's the haunting legacy of unhealed pain. It seeps into how we parent, how we love, and how we respond when we're triggered. It repeats through us when we act out of fear instead of awareness. And suddenly we're not just carrying our wounds, we're planting them into the hearts of the next generation. It's time to break the cycle. If you're a mother or a father, this healing is no longer just about you. It becomes an act of profound generational love. Because healing is not only your right, it is your sacred responsibility to those who come after you. To look at the pain you've carried for decades and say, "It ends with me." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Many women who carry the maternal wound walk into motherhood with a quiet, aching fear. What if I do to my child what was done to me? That fear is not weakness, it's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of change. It means your eyes are opening. It means you're not on autopilot anymore, because those who repeat without guilt are still trapped in the sleep of inherited trauma. But those who fear repeating have already begun to wake up. The truth is hard but necessary. No mother emerges from her childhood unscarred. Most carry pain they never got to process. Many still live with silent griefs, unmet needs, and expectations they unknowingly absorbed from their mothers. Some, in their pain, project onto their children the dreams they never lived, the potential they feel they lost. Others, to be everything their mothers weren't, erase themselves. They overcorrect, overgive, and overprotect, believing that self-sacrifice is what love means. But in doing so, they lose their center. Yet there is hope, and it doesn't lie in perfection. You don't need to become a flawless parent. That's not what breaks the cycle. The cycle breaks when you become present with your emotions, your patterns, and your reactions. Present with your child, not as an extension of you, but as their soul. Present with yourself, learning to parent the parts of you that were never nurtured. Children don't need perfect parents, they need awake ones. They need mothers and fathers who are willing to pause, to question, to reflect. Parents who can catch themselves acting out of pain and choose to do something different, even if it's hard, even if it's messy. Because the greatest gift you can give your child is not a polished performance of parenting, it's the courage to heal in front of them and with them. The cycle shatters when you begin treating yourself with the tenderness you longed for. When you forgive yourself for the years you parented unconsciously before you knew better. When you understand that raising a child is also re-raising yourself. It's learning how to love the child within you while loving the child in front of you. And perhaps most beautifully, it's realizing that by embracing your pain, you protect your child from having to carry it. When you say, "This wound stops here," you give your children the space to grow as who they are, not as who you had to become to survive. You free them to be loud, bold, emotional, and imperfect without fear of losing your love. You don't have to carry every burden your lineage handed you. You don't have to keep holding the weight of generations of silence. You can say, "This doesn't belong to me," and let it go. You can begin when no one began with you. And that alone is a miracle. That alone is healing. And here's something you need to remember. You can't change what happened. You can't rewrite the chapters of your childhood. But you can change how much power those chapters have over your life today. And that change doesn't come from blaming. It doesn't come from pretending it didn't hurt. It comes from something much deeper, something braver. It comes when you finally turn and face the wound you've been avoiding. When you say, "Yes, this hurt me." When you let the anger rise because it needs to rise. When you stop justifying, stop silencing, and permit yourself to grieve. Because for so long, you were just trying to survive. You minimized your pain, tried to understand her, tried to be the good child. You stayed quiet to keep the peace. You excused what you should have questioned. And now, you're allowed to feel it all. The rage, the sorrow, the emptiness, the longing. Healing the maternal wound isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about feeling what you were never allowed to feel. And in doing that, you begin to return to yourself. To you that existed before the adaptation, before the mask, before the silence. And that return, that homecoming to your soul, that is everything. When anger stays buried, it doesn't disappear, it transforms. It curls into your body, tensing your muscles, racing your heart, knotting your stomach. It becomes anxiety, sleepless nights, chronic illness, emotional shutdown. Bottled up rage becomes a quiet war inside your skin. And that's why feeling anger toward your mother doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person who's beginning to wake up to the truth of their violated boundaries. It means you're finally seeing where you were hurt, where you weren't protected, where your needs were dismissed or used against you. But there's a delicate line to walk here, one that requires courage and responsibility. Because healing isn't about throwing all the blame on your mother, turning her into a monster while casting yourself as a powerless victim. That's not healing. That's just another prison. Anger needs to be honored, not silenced. It needs to rise like a storm so it can cleanse the emotional debris, but it also needs to be processed. If we stay stuck in it, if we clutch it like a sword, it becomes another form of emotional dependency. Another way to stay attached to the very pain we're trying to break free from. Carl Jung spoke often about the importance of owning your story, not to punish yourself, but to liberate yourself, to reclaim your authorship. When you begin to understand that your mother likely acted from her pain, her unhealed wounds, it doesn't make your suffering disappear. It doesn't justify what happened, but it gives you something even more powerful, a choice. You can either repeat the cycle or transform it. Healing begins when you stop holding your breath, waiting for an apology that may never come. When you release the expectation that one day she'll finally see, finally admit, finally make it right. And in that release, you turn toward yourself and whisper, "What she couldn't give me, I will now learn to give myself." One of the most powerful tools I've ever used, and one I now recommend to everyone. Walking this road is the unsent letter to your mother. It's simple, raw, and revolutionary. Psychologists, trauma therapists, and family constellation practitioners use this often because it helps surface what's been buried for years, even decades. You don't have to send it. This letter isn't for her, it's for you. It's the space where your truth finally gets to breathe. And let me be honest with you, this is not the time to be polite. Don't edit. Don't explain. Don't rationalize. Just write it all. The hurt, the confusion, the rage, the resentment, the guilt, the grief, the parts that miss her, the moments that marked you, the things you wish she had said, the protection you never received, the dreams that crumbled under her criticism. Let it out like a storm. Let it burn. Because this letter is not a performance. It's a purge. I speak from experience. When I sat down to write mine, I had no idea what would come up. I thought I was over it. But as the words began to spill out, something broke open. Memories I hadn't touched in years came rushing back like ghosts that had been waiting for acknowledgement. And with those memories came patterns. I saw how my fear of being visible, my tendency to over-apologize, and even my struggle with money all traced back to that old wound. That maternal absence had echoed through every corner of my life, So please, just write a letter. And once you've poured everything onto the page, every ounce of truth, take a deep breath. Pause. Then, if it feels right, say thank you. Thank her not for the pain, but for the parts that helped you survive. Thank her for the things she was able to give. And then here's the sacred part: forgive. Not to excuse, not to forget, but to set yourself free. After that, burn the letter. Let the fire consume it. Watch the words turn to ash. Make it a ritual, a symbolic act of release. When I did that, the sensation was indescribable. It was as if something heavy I didn't even know I'd been carrying had finally left my body. My breath felt deeper. My chest is lighter. My spirit calmer. And that moment became a dividing line in my life, before and after. I swear to you, something shifted inside me that day. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. So here's my challenge to you: write that letter. Do it. Then come back and share in the comments how it went. Because what you write, your experience, might be exactly what someone else needs to see to begin their journey. Your story has power. It can light the way for another soul still trapped in silence. And remember this: forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means unshackling yourself from the emotional chain that keeps you locked in the past. It's choosing to stop fighting a battle that's already over, so you can finally live what's still possible. Because no, the pain may not vanish overnight, but it transforms, it softens. It goes from being a wound to being part of your story. And once something becomes a story, you can choose how it ends. There are other powerful tools, 2 ways to rebuild yourself from the inside out. Therapeutic writing doesn't have to stop with a letter to your mother. You can write to your inner child, the little version of you who never heard what they needed to hear. Imagine yourself as you are now, sitting face to face with that child. Look into their eyes and speak the words that were missing. You didn't deserve that. You are not too much. I'm so proud of you for surviving. Read it aloud. Let those words land. Let them begin to reprogram the image of love that got distorted so long ago. Another practice that holds deep emotional release is the empty chair technique. Sit across from an empty chair. Imagine your mother is sitting there, and speak. Say all the things you couldn't say before, whether it's fury or grief, confusion or longing. Cry, scream, be silent, do whatever you need to do. And when you're ready, respond as her. This is not about logic. It's about emotional truth. About finally getting to unfreeze the feelings that were never safe to express. None of this work is easy, but I promise it's worth it. Because you deserve to live free. You deserve a love that doesn't replay old pain. You deserve to take up space, to speak your truth, to choose connection without fear. And you can, one brave step at a time. Healing the maternal wound isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, symbolic, and cellular. One of the most beautiful tools on this journey is meditation with archetypes, especially the archetypal mother in her healed form. This isn't your actual mother. It's the image of what a mother could have been, the one who sees you, holds you, soothes you, and expects nothing in return. Just visualizing this radiant figure, gentle, warm, open-hearted, embracing you with complete love and safety, can begin to restructure the inner blueprint that has long been wired for pain, fear, or performance. This isn't fantasy, it's symbolic work. And the unconscious doesn't understand logic the way we do. It speaks the language of images, emotion, and energy. That's why symbols heal. When you close your eyes and feel the arms of the Great Mother around you, your body begins to release a little of its armor. When you imagine her voice saying, "You're safe now," your nervous system begins to shift. Slowly, you begin to replace the old inner mother, the one who was cold, absent, and conditional with one who reflects wholeness, kindness, and peace. Carl Jung offered another powerful method for inner transformation: active imagination. This is not passive daydreaming. It's a conscious dialogue with the parts of yourself that live in silence. Maybe it's the wounded child inside you who never got to cry, who still aches when they're ignored. Maybe it's the critical voice, sharp, cruel, relentless, that echoes your mother's judgments. Or maybe it's the nurturing part of you that's been buried under years of survival. In active imagination, you let these parts speak. You give them space. You ask, "What do you need?" And then you respond. You become the wise adult that part of you always needed. These inner conversations can change your life. They take you from being at the mercy of your inner world to becoming its loving architect. You stop fearing your emotions. You stop trying to fix yourself. You begin to build a relationship with your soul. And in that rebuilding, boundaries become essential. Sometimes we think setting a boundary with our mother is an act of cruelty, but in truth, it can be the most loving thing you ever do for both of you. Because a boundary is not punishment, it's protection. It's how we say, "I'm no longer available to be hurt in this way." It's a way of honoring your healing, of respecting the self that is slowly, courageously emerging. The truest love sometimes says, "This is where I stop letting the pain in." Seeking therapy, especially Jungian, integrative, or somatic-based therapy, is another powerful step. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. Healing isn't about becoming your therapist or figuring it out overnight. It's about finding a safe space to explore the story of your life through the lens of compassion and curiosity. It's not about blaming your mother. It's about finally seeing your pain with adult eyes, with strength, with gentleness, with the desire to move forward. You don't have to have it all figured out to begin. Every small step, every insight, every tear, every boundary, every breath starts to shift the way you feel inside. And that shift matters deeply. There's a name for this process in psychology. It's called individuation. Jung described it as the sacred journey of becoming who you were, always meant to be, not a version shaped by fear or shame, but the true, integrated you. The one who exists beyond the wounds. The one who includes everything: your light, your shadow, your anger, your wisdom. The one who no longer needs to be perfect because you finally learned to be whole. Individuation is the act of coming home to yourself. It means embracing the parts you rejected, reclaiming the emotions you silenced, and honoring the self that was once molded just to please others. It's not a straight path. It's not a single breakthrough. It's a dance. Some days you'll feel light and free. Other days, the weight will return. But the difference now, you know what that weight is. And you know that it's not you, it's the past. And the past no longer has to define you. Individuation means stopping the search outside for the love that was missing and learning to generate it from within. It's the moment you realize that the wounded child still lives inside you, but now, finally, there is an adult capable of listening, loving, and protecting them. This journey asks for courage, because it often means letting go of the identities you built to survive. It's like taking off layers of clothing that no longer fit layers of guilt, people-pleasing, silence, perfectionism, and breathing with your full chest for the first time. It's both terrifying and exhilarating. But it's real, and it's yours. And most importantly, this process includes not just recognizing what was missing, but creating what was never given, creating love, creating safety, creating rituals of care, boundaries of protection, and a new language for your inner world. It includes looking into the mirror and saying, "I matter." It includes reclaiming the value of your desires, your voice, and your right to take up space. You are not what was done to you. You are who you choose to be now. And when that choice is made with awareness, when it is rooted in truth and not trauma, your life begins to transform, not because the past has changed, but because you stop identifying with it. You stop being a reflection of pain, and you become the creator of your story. For years, you've tried to understand why love felt so hard. Why does connection leave you anxious or numb? Why do you keep explaining yourself to people who never really saw you? Why do you twist and bend yourself to fit into spaces that were never made for you? But maybe now, it's time to stop trying. Stop knocking on the same closed doors. Stop asking for love where it cannot be found, and instead begin to give yourself the love you've always deserved. The kind that asks nothing, the kind that accepts you fully, the kind that begins, not outside, but deep within your soul. So now, take a moment and ask yourself, what have you learned? What truth rose to the surface for you as you listened, maybe for the first time with your whole heart? Was it the realization that your anger is valid? That your pain have a name? That you no longer have to chase love to feel worthy? Or maybe it was the quiet understanding that healing doesn't require your mother to change it. Begins when you do. I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share one thing you've learned from this video and one practice you're going to bring into your life starting today. Whether it's writing the unsent letter, practicing active imagination, or simply being kinder to yourself, your words might be the light someone else needs to begin their healing too. And remember, you are not what was done to you. You are who you choose to become consciously, courageously, and with compassion.